Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into a crucial, often unseen part of the energy world today, the global market for sand control systems.
That's right. It's fundamental to oil and gas production, but maybe not always top of mind.
Exactly. So we've got a detailed report here, and our aim is really to pull out the essential understanding, the current size of this market, where it's heading.
What's making it grow, and importantly, how different parts of the world stack up. Give you the key takeaways.
Okay, let's get right to the numbers then. The report puts the global market for these systems at, well, a pretty substantial USD 300 and 520 million for 2025.
$3.5 billion, roughly, yeah. But that's just the starting point, really.
It really is, because the projections show some serious upward movement.
Oh, definitely. By 2033, the forecast is for that market to hit USD 639.05 million.
Wow, okay. That's quite a jump, almost double.
It is. And that translates to a compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of 7.20% between 2025 and 2033. So yeah, real momentum there.
7.2% CAGR. Okay. So let's unpack this. For anyone listening who might not be super familiar, what exactly are we talking about with sand control systems? Why do they matter so much?
Sure. So basically, sand control systems are the technologies and methods oil and gas operators use to stop sand, or fine particles, really,
Right.
from flowing into the well along with the oil and gas.
Right, you want the hydrocarbons, not the rock.
Exactly. It might sound simple, but getting it wrong is a big deal. It's vital for keeping the well running efficiently and safely, too.
Why is it so critical? I mean, what happens if sand does get produced?
Well, uncontrolled sand can cause a whole cascade of problems. It acts like sandpaper, eroding expensive equipment downhole, like pipes and valves.
Ouch. That sounds costly.
It is. And it can also damage the reservoir rock itself near the well, clog up flow paths, and even make the whole well unstable.
Okay, so it affects production and safety.
Absolutely. So good sand control is all about protecting the well's integrity, preventing equipment damage, and ultimately getting more oil and gas out reliably, maximizing recovery.
Makes perfect sense. So given that importance, what's driving this significant growth we're seeing in the forecast? You mentioned that 7.2% CAGR.
Yeah.
What are the key factors pushing this market forward?
Well, a primary driver, maybe the most fundamental one, is the ongoing surge in global energy demand. Simple as that.
More demand means more drilling.
Pretty much. As economies grow and populations increase, the need for oil and gas just keeps rising, which leads to more exploration and drilling projects worldwide. And more wells mean more need for sand control.
Okay, that's straightforward. What else is contributing?
Technology. The systems themselves are constantly improving, which is a huge factor.
Innovation playing a role.
Definitely. We're seeing real advancements in established techniques like gravel packing, plus newer things like autonomous inflow control devices or AICDs.
Autonomous inflow control. Sounds sophisticated. What do they do?
They're essentially smart devices down in the well. They can kind of sense what's flowing, oil, gas, water, sand, and automatically adjust the flow from different zones.
So they optimize production while stopping sand.
Exactly. They can choke back zones producing too much sand or water without needing surface intervention. It's about making sand control more effective, more reliable, and, well, smarter.
That's a great example of tech driving efficiency. What other elements are pushing growth?
Another big one is the industry's push into more challenging environments. Think deep water and ultra-deep water offshore.
Right, going further out, deeper down.
Yeah. And those environments often involve formations that are less consolidated, less stable. Basically, they're more likely to produce sand.
So tougher conditions naturally increase the need for really robust sand control.
Precisely. And the final key driver I'd point to is the increasing focus on getting more out of existing fields, mature wells.
Enhanced oil recovery, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Companies are really trying to maximize the reserve-to-production ratio, squeeze every last economic barrel out. And effective sand control is often essential to extend the life of these older wells and boost their output.
Okay, so it's tackling new frontiers and making the most of what we already have. Makes sense. But surely it's not all smooth sailing. Are there any headwinds, anything that might slow this growth down?
Yes, there is one major factor that always looms over the oil and gas industry: the volatility of crude oil prices.
The price roller coaster.
You got it. Big investment decisions in exploration and drilling are very sensitive to oil price swings. When prices drop sharply or become really unstable, companies tend to pull back on spending.
They get cautious with the big capital projects.
Exactly. So that can lead to delays or even cancellations of projects, which, directly impacts the demand for equipment and services like sand control systems. It's a constant factor to consider.
Understood. Market uncertainty can definitely put the brakes on things.
Yeah.
Now, looking ahead within the market itself, what are some of the major trends shaping things?
Well, we're seeing a couple of the drivers we mentioned really solidifying as key trends. First, that continued expansion of offshore drilling.
Right, the move to deeper waters isn't stopping.
No, as the easier onshore reserves deplete, the focus inevitably shifts offshore, despite the complexities.
And the second key trend?
It's that relentless drive to improve the reserve-to-production ratios, getting more out of existing assets. It's just smart business, and it means technologies that help achieve that, like advanced sand control, will remain in high demand.
Okay, let's dig into the specifics a bit more now. The report breaks down the market by the different techniques used for sand control. What's the outlook there for 2025?
Right. So in 2025, the dominant technique is expected to be gravel packing, still the workhorse.
Gravel packing. Remind us briefly what that involves.
Sure. It's essentially creating a downhole filter. You pump specific sizes of gravel, or sand actually, around a screen in the wellbore. This gravel pack blocks the formation sand, but lets the oil and gas flow through the screen.
Got it. And why is that expected to dominate?
It's just very effective, especially in these more complex reservoirs that are being targeted more often. It's a proven, reliable method for many challenging situations.
Okay. But in terms of growth, which technique is really picking up speed?
That would be resin-coated gravel. It's projected to be the fastest growing segment.
Resin-coated, so sticking the gravel together.
Sort of, yeah. The resin coating helps lock the gravel grains in place after they're pumped downhole. This is especially useful in those unconsolidated formations. Think very loose sand, common in both offshore and some onshore drilling.
And what are the benefits driving that growth?
It offers enhanced permeability compared to some other methods, meaning the oil and gas can flow more easily, and it can also reduce the need for future maintenance or workovers. So better flow, less hassle.
Interesting. The report mentions a few other techniques, too.
It does. Things like standalone screens, basically just specialized metal filters without the gravel pack, and plastic consolidation, which uses chemicals to try and bind the formation sand together in place, plus a category for others.
But gravel packing and resin-coated gravel are the main ones to watch.
Yeah, in terms of market share and current growth trajectory, they're definitely the key players.
Okay. Now let's shift from the how to the where. How does the market break down between onshore and offshore applications for 2025?
Offshore is expected to hold the largest share of the market next year.
No surprise there, given the discussion about deep water.
Exactly. It's directly linked to all that increasing deep water and ultra-deep water activity we talked about. Those projects inherently require robust sand control.
But where's the growth strongest, application-wise?
Actually, the onshore segment is showing really rapid growth.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
It ties back to that focus on maximizing production from existing and mature onshore fields. Applying effective, sometimes newer, sand control techniques to these older wells can significantly boost their recovery rates. So there's a lot of activity there.
Right. So offshore is bigger overall, but onshore is growing faster.
Got it. One more segmentation here. Well, completion type. Cased hole versus open hole. What's the picture for 2025?
Cased hole completions are expected to have the largest market share in 2025.
And the reasoning there. It's largely driven by the need to, again, enhance production from aging conventional oil fields and also from shale reservoirs. In these situations, you often need the structural support and zonal isolation provided by the steel casing cemented in the well. Wellbore stability is key.
So cased hole provides more control in older or more complex wells. Where's the growth then?
The open hole segment is growing rapidly. This is mainly because horizontal drilling has become so common.
Drilling sideways through the reservoir.
Exactly. And those long horizontal sections are often completed open hole, meaning no casing across the production zone to maximize contact with the reservoir. So as horizontal drilling increases, so does the demand for open hole sand control methods like specialized screens.
Okay, that makes sense. We've covered techniques, applications, completion types. Let's zoom out now to the geography. How does this market look region by region, starting with North America?
Right. North America is the current leader, holds the biggest piece of the pie, actually over 40% of the total revenue estimated for 2025. That's about USD $1,302.40 million.
Over $1.3 billion. and its growth.
The projected CAGR for North America from 2025 to 2033 is a pretty solid 5.7%, steady growth.
What's underpinning that strong position and steady growth in North America?
It's a few things. You've got the massive shale gas and tight oil activity, particularly in the U.S. There's also a lot of enhanced oil recovery work on mature fields. Plus, significant deepwater drilling continues in the Gulf of Mexico.
And regulations play a part too.
Yeah, environmental and operational regulations regarding sand management and well integrity are quite stringent, which also drives the adoption of reliable sand control systems.
And the U.S. market is the giant within North America, presumably.
Oh, absolutely. The U.S. alone is estimated at over $1 billion, USD 127.59 million in 2025, growing at 5.5% CAGR.
Wow.
Canada and Mexico are significant too, though. Canada around USD 156 million, Mexico about USD 118 million, and both with slightly higher CAGRs, actually, 6.5% and 6.2% respectively.
Okay, let's cross the pond to Europe. What's the situation there?
Europe is the second largest market globally. It accounts for just over 30% of the revenue in 2025, putting it at around USD 1020.80 million.
So still over $1 billion. And the growth.
This is interesting. Europe is actually projected to have the fastest CAGR among the major established regions at 6.2% through to 2033.
Faster than North America. Okay, that's a key point. What's driving that?
It's a mix. There's ongoing and sometimes increasing offshore exploration, especially in places like the North Sea. You also have a lot of aging offshore fields that need careful management, including sand control, to keep producing.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Strict environmental rules definitely play a role, pushing for efficient and safe operations. And there are still investments happening in deepwater areas in certain parts of Europe.
Can you give us a feel for some of the key country markets in Europe?
Sure. The UK is significant, estimated at about USD 171 million with a strong 7.0% CAGR. Germany is actually larger in market size, around USD 202 million with a 6.4% CAGR.
Germany larger than the UK. That's interesting.
Yeah, it reflects broad industrial activity in specific projects. Russia is also substantial, around USD 158 million, though the CAGR is a bit lower at 5.2%, likely reflecting current complexities.
Right.
Then you have France, Italy, Spain, all decent-sized markets in the $80 to $95 million range, with CAGRs mostly between 5 and 6%. It's quite widespread across the continent. Even places like Sweden and Denmark contribute.
Okay, a dynamic picture in Europe. Let's head east now to Asia Pacific, or APAC. What's happening there?
APAC holds roughly 23% of the global market share for 2025. That translates to about USD 844.8 million.
So third largest region currently.
Correct. But here's the headline for APAC. The projected CAGR is 9.9% between 2025 and 2033.
Wow, almost double digits. That's significantly higher than North America or Europe.
It is. It's the highest growth rate of any region by a noticeable margin. This really points to, a potential shift in the market center of gravity over the next decade. Huge opportunities there.
What's fueling that incredible dynamism in Asia Pacific?
A major factor is the strong focus on energy security, particularly in China. They're investing heavily in domestic production, both onshore and offshore, to meet their massive energy needs.
And elsewhere in the region.
We're seeing growing investments in deepwater exploration and development, notably in India, and just generally, rapid industrial growth across many APAC countries is boosting overall energy demand, which flows down to needing more sand control.
Which countries are the powerhouses within APAC?
China is the biggest market by far, estimated at around USD 355 million in 2025, with a very strong 9.4% CAGR.
Still huge growth from a large base.
Exactly. And India, while smaller at about USD 84 million, has an even more impressive projected VAGR of 11.8%.
11.8%. Remarkable.
Yeah. Then you have Japan, South Korea, Australia, all significant markets with CAGRs in the 8-9% range. And Southeast Asia as a block is also growing very fast, over 10% CAGR projected.
So really strong growth across the board in APAC. Okay, what about South America? How does that region fit in?
South America accounts for a smaller slice, just over 5% of the global market in 2025. That's about USD 134 million. But the growth outlook is solid, with a projected CAGR of 7.9%.
7.9%. So growing faster than North America or Europe too? What are the key drivers there?
Increasing investment in R&D is a factor, especially in Brazil, which has complex pre-salt offshore fields. Supportive government policies aiming to boost production in places like Argentina also help.
And the main country markets?
Brazil's the largest, around USD 57 million, with an 8.5% CAGR. Argentina is next, about USD 22 million, but with a slightly higher AG forecast at 8.8%. Then you have Colombia, Peru, Chile, all contributing.
Okay, let's move to the Middle East. Traditionally huge oil producers, but what's their share of this specific market?
It's actually relatively small, around 2% of the global market in 2025. That's about USD 141 million.
Only 2%. That seems counterintuitive.
Well, many established Middle Eastern fields historically haven't had the same level of sand production issues as some other regions, or they use different, sometimes older, completion methods. However, the projected CAGR is quite high at 8.5%.
8.5% CAGR. So growing strongly now. Why is that?
There's increasing work on more complex reservoirs, enhanced recovery projects, and also, interestingly, as some countries like Qatar focus more on renewables, there's a push to maximize efficiency from existing hydrocarbon assets now, which boosts sand control needs. Plus, general government investments, like in Turkey.
And the breakdown within the Middle East.
Saudi Arabia leads, close to USD 50 million, with an 8.8% CAGR. The UAE is next, around USD 29 million, but with a slightly higher 9.0% CAGR. Turkey and Qatar are smaller but growing fast, around 9% and 8% respectively. Egypt also features.
Right. And finally, Africa. What's the picture there?
Africa holds the smallest share currently, around 1% of the global market in 2025, which is about USD 77 million. The projected CAGR is 7.5%.
So similar growth rate to South America, roughly? What's driving it in Africa?
It's tied to ongoing exploration and development, particularly offshore West Africa, like in Nigeria where there are government initiatives, and just general oil and gas activity across various countries on the continent.
Key markets within Africa.
South Africa is actually the largest single market listed, at around USD 27 million with an 8.4% CAGR. Nigeria is smaller, about USD 6 million, but growing at 7.7%. The rest of Africa category is quite significant collectively, though, around USD 44 million.
Okay, so it really is a global market, but with quite distinct regional dynamics in terms of size and especially growth rates.
Sure.
Now, who are the main companies competing in this space?
Yeah, it's a competitive field. You have the big, well-known integrated service companies and also some more specialized players.
Usual suspects.
Pretty much. The report lists names like Schlumberger, Weatherford, Halliburton, National Oilwell Varco, NOV, Baker Hughes. Those are the giants.
Right.
But also companies like Welltec, Superior Energy Services, Tendeka, Veriprem, and Packers Plus are mentioned as key players. So a mix of global reach and more focused expertise.
Sounds like a busy market. Any recent innovations or moves grabbing attention?
Yes, the report specifically highlights one from Halliburton. Back in October 2023, they introduced something called the Equiflow Density Autonomous Inflow Control Device.
Another AICD, like you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. But this one is specifically designed to better handle situations where the fluid types and densities in the reservoir are uncertain or vary a lot.
Ah, so it's even smarter, adapting to trickier fluid mixes.
That's the idea. Helping operators improve recovery in complex wells where maybe older AICD technology might struggle. It's a good example of that continuous innovation needed to tackle tougher reservoirs and push efficiency.
Fascinating. Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. To try and wrap it all up, what are the absolute core takeaways from this deep dive into the sand control systems market?
Well, first, it's clearly a substantial market, over $3.5 billion now. And it's poised for strong growth over the next decade or so, heading towards $6 billion plus.
Driven by that fundamental energy demand and, crucially, by technological advances.
Exactly. But we also need to remember that potential drag from volatile oil prices is always there in the background.
Right. And in terms of the what and where within the market.
Currently, gravel packing is the main technique, and offshore is the biggest application segment. But keep an eye on resin-coated gravel as the fastest-growing technique, and also the rapid growth happening in onshore applications.
And the geographic picture.
North America is the current heavyweight champ in terms of market size. But the real story seems to be the growth trajectory in Asia-Pacific, that near 10% CAGR is definitely something to watch. Europe also remains very significant and growing solidly.
Okay, a really comprehensive overview. It definitely highlights how vital and complex this part of the energy sector is. It brings us to our final thought for you, the listener.
Yeah, considering the increasing global focus on sustainable energy and the inevitable long-term energy transition, how might the sand control market evolve?
Right. What new challenges or maybe even innovations might be needed to balance that continued need for hydrocarbons, at least for a while, with the growing environmental pressures and the shift towards greener sources?
It's a complex balancing act ahead for the industry. Definitely something to ponder.
Indeed. Thanks for diving deep with us today.